Hi, I'm Charles. Makikinig tayo dito kila Mark Zuckerberg.
Lot of interest. We've really seen this trend, I think, emerge over the last couple of years where writers and reporters who are really knowledgeable about certain subjects, from science to sports, are finding there's an audience out there that really does want to go deeper with them on the subjects that they're experts in and that people are really passionate about. And I have to say, as a former journalist myself, I am super excited that we're supporting them. Some of the people who are going to be writing for Bulletin that we're really excited to have are Malcolm Gladwell, best-selling author of Tipping Point, Outliers, so many other really well-known books. Tan France, I feel like everybody knows Tan France from Tan France's Real Reality. Jessica Yellen, she's a former colleague of mine from CNN, great journalist. And Jane Wells, another great reporter who's going to be writing about Wall Street. So two of my favorite journalists. And, of course, we're going to talk about some of the other familiar names. You know, as you know, this is really our first foray into working with individuals and journalists.
Yeah, it's exciting to get started here. You know, we've been investing in news for years now, right? And you know, we've been trying to figure out the best way to support journalists, including a number of partnerships, you know, with larger media companies. But this is the first time that we built a product that is directly for journalists and individual writers. And you know, one of the reasons why we're doing this is a response to what we're seeing and what's happening in the media ecosystem, where more and more independent writers are discovering ways to use their voice and make money through other avenues, you know, similar to the ones that we're introducing here. So, you know, we're trying to elevate and support those writers and creators who are already producing high quality work. And writers using Bulletin are going to be able to post their own work on their own branded websites. They can then deliver their posts to subscribers through email newsletters. They can share them across the web. And of course, they can share them on Facebook. And given Facebook's distribution and infrastructure, you know, we think that Bulletin can really contribute to this ecosystem and be another great tool for writers and creators to have in their toolbox. So, you know, I don't know if I missed anything key about how this works, or if you want to go through any of the mechanics in a bit more detail there.
Let's do that. So in just a minute, we're going to have some of the Bulletin writers join us and talk about what they're going to be writing. But I'm just going to assume that we perhaps have a few journalists who are listening in now wondering how all of this is going to work. So why don't you explain the mechanics of this and how you see Bulletin actually working?
Sure. So, you know, I mean, I think what sets Bulletin apart is the integration with Facebook pages that enables you to publish across a number of different formats, right? So this means that the work that's created by Bulletin writers is going to be eligible for distribution in Facebook News. We're going to enable additional ways in Newsfeed to help audiences who are going to be interested easily find those stories and subscribe. So there will be extra distribution features, extra ability to grow your audience and subscriptions. We're going to include a set of tools to help creators complement their writing work with audio, from podcasts to live audio rooms like the one that we're doing here. You know, and this, you know, it has to be a way for writers to make a living in a way that's sustainable over the long term. But, you know, unlike other existing newsletter offerings, you know, we're doing a few things. I mean, first is, you know, we do think that the multimedia aspect of being able to do newsletters and podcasts is important and relevant. You know, also a little different from what others are doing, Bulletin writers are going to keep all of their subscription revenue. We're not going to take any cut. And even if writers choose to move to different platforms in the future, they're going to own all their own content and email subscriber lists. We think that this concept of portability is extremely important for the creator economy, where creators are going to bring their best work, and the best creators are going to go to the platforms that give them the best tools, that help them build the best businesses, and ultimately that give them the most freedom. And you know, we think that part of how we're going to not only help support the creative economy, but get the best content for our community across our different platforms is going to be by having solutions that are portable and that give creators a lot of control.
Absolutely. And Mark, we mentioned a few Bulletin writers earlier. I just want to mention again that we're going to be introducing many more writers in the coming days and weeks, and we want people to spend time getting to know them and the content that they're going to be sharing on Facebook. And I think we can mention a few others now. We also have Erin Andrews. I am a huge football fan, even though I support the worst team in the NFL, and I'll just let other people out there figure out who that is. I do love her NFL coverage. For the foodies out there, they'll be very excited about Dory Greenspan. She's a contributor to the New York Times Magazine. Her newsletter on desserts will share stories and recipes. And we have many, many others. Mark, tell me who some of your favorites are.
Well, I think most people know Mitch Albom from his best-selling book.
Love him.
He's also going to be writing something that I think could be pretty powerful about his work with orphanages, and I'm pretty excited to check that out. Adam Grant is going to be part of the program. He's a well-known organizational psychologist and best-selling author. He's wrote a book with Cheryl, and he writes about how we all work and lead and live. And there are also going to be a bunch of local news writers joining Bulletin soon too. And local news is another really important area of journalism. It has its unique challenges and struggles, and there are communities that don't have good local coverage. So part of what I think we can try to do here is try to make a real investment in local news, and see if Bulletin can be a way that local news writers can serve their communities and give people the kind of local information that are really important to our lives as well. So
can I add one thing about local? Because you have talked to me a lot about your concerns about the future of local news, and it's interesting because local was partly the inspiration here. During COVID, we were looking at communities that, as you said, did not have a local paper or any local news outlet at this exact moment when people were so desperate for news about their community. So I really do think Bulletin has the potential to give just one local writer in their community the opportunity to fill that gap. And I love that piece of it.
Yeah. No, I think that's really important. Not just geographically local, but also making it so that different communities can get people who writing about all the different interests out there. And I think that this is going to be one of the areas that I think can be really well served by models like this. Anyway, it's really important to us that we launch Bulletin with an initial set of people who are unique and impressive, and I think you've done that with this first group of writers. And now today for the rest of this session, I'd love to take a moment to hear from a few of these writers, beginning with someone who I've gotten to know a bit, and I'm a huge fan of his work, Tyler Cowan. He's one of the writers for Marginal Revolution, which you're going to find on Bulletin starting today. So let me get Tyler up here. I need to find him here.
we have quite a few people.
There we go.
There we go.
Awesome, Tyler. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Tyler. You there, Tyler?
Yeah, he's there. Can you hear him, Campbell?
No. Tyler, you there?
Tyler is here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you just fine.
I can hear you. I can't hear Tyler. All right. We'll work on that. Go ahead.
Okay.
I don't want to slow you down.
Well, it's a good thing that today we're launching Bulletin and not live audio. All right. Well, Tyler, I'll just jump in, and Campbell, we'll kind of work out the technical issue there. But Tyler is a renowned economist. Someone who's already built a huge following for your work at Marginal Revolution, and I'm curious to hear from you today. Just what are the tools that you think are going to be really important that you're going to need as we build out Bulletin? And what do you think are going to be the important things that we need to do here in order to see more writers charting their own independent paths?
Well, first, when I hear the word bulletin, I think of substance and I think of diversity of both voices and topics. So for me as a writer, writing has to start with reading and listening. So the biggest thing Bulletin is going to do for me is give me more independent voices to read and to listen to make the world of ideas more competitive and in some ways more local as it needs to be, and simply to grow that ecosystem. For me, this is a phenomenal opportunity.
Well, we're really excited to have you on here too. I mean, I think your work is extremely high quality, and it's exactly the kind of work that we wanted to kind of get started with here. I'm curious to hear a bit about how you currently engage with your audience, right? Because Marginal Revolution, it's not just the place where you put out a lot of great intellectual work. It's also, you know, a community that you help curate and grow. And I'm curious how you're thinking that will change here with Bulletin moving forward, or kind of what your hopes are for that.
Well, I've blogged every day for the last 18 years without missing a single day. And when I look at this partnership with Facebook, what I see is an institution where its core ethos is dedicated to the notion of the whole world communicating with each other. So for me, this is a chance to do more, to have more audience, more ideas, more substance, more diversity.
Yeah, and how are you thinking about the multimedia aspect of it? I mean, you've done a lot of podcasts and things like that as well, but I'm curious if you're thinking of evolving or how you're thinking of using that in terms of building up the community.
This is day one, of course. So far, I have just been writing posts, but absolutely my presence out there in the world is multimedia, and I would like to explore all available channels in those directions.
Yeah.
And to have sessions live for the world through Bulletin as a part of Facebook, where we talk about economics and other ideas, absolutely.
Yeah. So one of the things that I'm curious to get your take on is the creator economy overall, right? It's in some ways kind of a funny word, right? I mean, you're an economist. So I'm curious what you think about this, right? Is this, do you view this as kind of a real movement or industry or just more of a buzzword? What are the commonalities between the different kinds of creative and independent artistic and intellectual work that are being done? What do you think this means for you from an economic perspective, and kind of what do you think this means for the industry or the different industries that this touches going forward?
Well, I think writers moving forward and thinkers need to be more entrepreneurial. And that's a great opportunity, but it's in some ways a burden, right? I don't have to tell you, it's not easy being entrepreneurial every day. So I think insofar as we have new tools that make it easier to support diverse, independent voices, being both intellectuals and entrepreneurs, the notion that they are entrepreneurs, I think, will also improve the quality of their ideas as intellectuals.
Hey,
yeah,
I'm back.
That makes a lot of sense. All right, Campbell, we got you back. Good.
Yes. Can I ask a question? I
Please.
was able to hear at the end of your conversation. Tyler, I wanted to ask you about COVID. With the post-COVID world that we seem to be entering, hopefully we're entering,
Yes.
what are you thinking about, both in terms of the economic outlook for our country, but also just generally as we try to get back to normal life?
I think so much in our world is changing. So over the first quarter, the U.S. economy grew at a rate of 6.4%. We've seen more people trying to change jobs than ever before. I think social mores are changing rapidly. It'll be a bit like the Roaring '20s. New York City is partying. So with so much changing, we need better discourse to make sense of how we live, where we are headed, to again give these diverse, independent voices some ability to structure what we're making of ourselves as a nation, as a world, as a set of communities. So I think this is, the most important time in my lifetime for us all to decide, what are we actually doing with the civilization we have built?
Oh, I hope you're right about all the excitement that lies ahead. I want to throw out one other thing. I am not as deep in the weeds on the more challenging subjects, let's say, that you write about. But what I love about Marginal Revolution is your curiosity really knows no bounds. I mean, you write about everything. There's a lot about ethnic food. I mean, what are you thinking about for Bulletin? Is it going to be similar to in terms of the range of topics, anything and everything?
Same range, maybe even more. You know, this morning I was writing a post about the Beatles and how the Beatles are a lesson about how co-founders don't always get on so well together, and how you can find encoded references to that in their songs. And I'm going to talk through one of those songs and show how it's kind of a story about the tech world as well. I'm writing a post, why is the Indian diaspora been so successful? Why is Nigeria such a great country to visit? You know, anything and everything, and, you know, onwards and upwards, I would say.
Mark, we have another writer that we're going to bring in, Raven Baxter, and Tyler, I would love for you to stick around for that if you're game.
Great.
You may have questions for Raven too. But Mark, Tyler, I didn't warn you about this, so I'm going to throw a surprise at both of you if you're okay with it. Anybody, and I know there are a lot of fans of Tyler's who are listening, but anybody who knows his podcast knows about the segment that he has, Overrated, Underrated, where he throws out topics for his guests to decide if they are overrated or underrated by our society, and then the guests opine on why. So I came up with a few topics for the both of you that I thought for our last few minutes before we go to Raven, maybe listeners would be very curious to hear your thoughts on. So are you guys game?
I love surprises.
Good. Okay. Topic number 1, artificial intelligence, overrated or underrated? Tyler, you want to go first?
Artificial intelligence and its impact is greatly underrated by the general public. They tend to simply assume the world as we know it will continue. I think maybe some of its proponents overrate it. They think it will have the ability to destroy our entire world. But today there's this wonderful spin-off of GPT-3 that does programming for you, and that's amazing. Mark?
Yeah, I'm with you on this. I think it's still underrated. And I do think that, you know, when people start thinking about the conceptions of artificial general intelligence and some of that, I think that's still quite a ways off. But the optimizations that we get, just making everything around us better, from kind of medical systems to the relevance of content on the internet, you know, to safety systems in our cars and things like that. It's hard to, you know, to kind of feel this, but everything just kind of gets a few % better. At a continual rate, and a lot of this is due to AI. You know, when I look at some of, you know, Facebook's own performance and you know, where we've generally done better than we thought we would, in terms from extra work that we've basically been able to do in AI to push the state of the art forward. Even if that just means, you know, having things be a few % better, that just compounds over time. So I do think that this is a pretty big wave overall, even before you get to some of the artificial general intelligence stuff, and I think people tend to underrate that.
Okay, I have another one. And Mark, you mentioned the AI's use in cars. Self-driving cars, overrated or underrated?
I think for Arizona, underrated. For parts of this country that have snow and not enough white lines on the road, overrated. People promised we would have them by now. At the moment, it seems to be 20 years off for most parts of the country. So I would say wildly vacillating between underrated and overrated, and never quite settling on the right point.
Mark?
Yeah, interesting. I mean, Tyler, I tend to agree with you that this is going to take a bit longer. I mean, it has taken longer. But, you know, I kind of think that in our lifetimes, there are a set of major technology projects that need to be taken on that I think will probably that are going to be massive projects, right? So it probably require, you know, $100 billion of investment or on that order, but I think will unlock, you know, trillions of dollars of value in the economy overall. And it seems like self-driving cars, you know, the more that people dig into this, the more it feels like it's an AI complete problem, in the sense that in order to solve self-driving cars, there's no kind of shortcut or domain-specific thing. It's almost like you need to kind of solve AI overall. But I don't know. I think it's self-driving cars. I think some of the next platform work in virtual and augmented reality. I think curing a bunch of diseases. Obviously climate change. I mean, I think some of the solar system exploration work. I mean, I think there's a handful of kind of major technical challenges in our lifetime, and I certainly think that this is one of them, and it's just going to be, I think, massively transformative, even if it's further off.
Yeah, I as the mother of a soon-to-be teenager, boy, I wish it was moving faster. Okay, topic 3, work from home, overrated or underrated?
I think work from home will be about 20% of many workforces. The broader social impact and rise in living standards is underrated by most people. It will transform our nation, revive many rural areas, make workforces more diverse, bring the entire world to bear on American creative genius, even without immigration increasing, as I would like to see. And I don't think it's close to everyone. I think face-to-face is essential, but it could be the biggest development of the last few years, and a lot of people still haven't quite digested that yet. I'm very bullish on work from home, noting it will be the partial version, not that everyone just stays home all the time.
But you're only at 20%, though.
Yeah.
20% is a lot. If 20% of anything changes, much less the U.S. workforce, right, that is a massive earthquake. I think
Got it, but you're at 20% of the overall workforce, not 20% of a company like Facebook.
20% of what you would call not immediately physically present labor. So not counting cashiers, but people who maybe could work from home. Another 20%.
Yeah, got it. Interesting. So I actually think that over a, call it a 5 to 10 year period, maybe on the longer end of that, I kind of expect us to get to almost 50% of Facebook, kind of working remotely.
Sure.
And maybe that translates to about 20% of the overall economy, because knowledge workers at tech companies probably are more able to work remotely than a number of other folks. But I don't know. I think I share your optimism for this one. I've been really impressed over the last year about how effectively companies have just been able to keep on going, right? With especially knowledge work type companies, and it's, so I think that will continue. There are of course a lot of advantages to being in person, so I tend to agree with you that that's still going to be a big thing too, for building relationships, for building culture. But I do think remote. I'm optimistic about it for a bunch of the same reasons that you are, in terms of expanding mobility, right? So, or opportunity. A lot of people have had to move to cities to get good jobs, or basically, like a lot of companies are only hiring in cities, but then, the city infrastructure doesn't keep up, so the cost of living goes up, and the quality of life isn't that great. And I think a lot of people are going to prefer to work remotely, and I think that will be great for kind of equalizing opportunity a bit across the country and maybe even across the world, even without as much immigration. As you say, and I share your views on that. I'm also pretty optimistic about, some of the technologies, whether it's virtual or augmented reality, that are going to let people kind of basically teleport, like feel present, like they're in a place, even when they're not actually there. That's a huge part of what we do and work on. That's still a number of years off before that's fully mature, but I think that can be really powerful. And I think in a world where we're teleporting more and maybe traveling around physically less, I also think that could have some good knock-on effects for the climate. So I'm pretty optimistic about that as well.
I just have to say, selfishly, I think it's overrated. I miss my team so much. I cannot wait to get back to the office, and I'm counting the minutes. Okay, we've got...
You're extroverted.
You're part of the 80%.
I am. I so am. Okay, last one, and then we're going to introduce Dr. Raven Baxter. But the last one I have to do. Overrated or underrated smoked meats? And Mark, why don't you go first and perhaps give Tyler a little context on why I chose this one?
I mean, Well, it's clearly underrated. You know, I mean, Tyler, I think is probably aware of this. I mean, there's a silly meme of me on the internet where I was just, you know, I was doing like a live, almost podcast-like thing one weekend while I was smoking a brisket and just talking about how I was smoking it and my love for Sweet Baby Ray's sauce, which I think is one of the best sauces. Actually, let me not qualify that. I think it is the best sauce. So yeah, no, I mean, smoking meat's both a great pastime and a delicious cuisine. Tyler?
Fully agree. Here's the thing. During the pandemic, we all got into food delivery. We had to, right? But for many years, I've been doing food delivery of smoked meats to my home, usually from Texas, sometimes from Kentucky. There are amazing opportunities where you can get some of America's best food, mail order, not more expensive than going out to a mid-price restaurant. And since you've been doing food delivery, now's the time to wake up and do it for smoked meat.
Okay, I'm with you on that. I'm with you. I love my barbecue ribs. Okay, guys, I want to make sure we have a few minutes for her because I'm a huge fan. Dr. Raven Baxter is joining us right now. I think she's on now. Raven is a molecular biologist, and her bulletin, Science and Culture, will be about current events and the scientists. Raven, you there? Let's see. Mark, you may have...
Well, she's muted. Well, I see her in the room.
Unmute. Unmute.
Oh, boy. So I can't hear Campbell, but can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, and we'll debug this issue afterwards.
Okay.
But yes, we can hear you.
Oh, dear.
Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here, and congratulations on the launch.
Oh, thank you. So, you know, unlike Tyler, you're a bit more new to this, right? I mean, you're on this journey for the first time. I guess like we are with this. So I'm really curious to just hear how you're thinking about this, how you're thinking about Bulletin and the work that you're going to be doing here.
Well, I'm so excited. I am a molecular biologist, but I'm also a science communicator, and that's somebody who makes science fun and engaging to the public and bridges the gap between science and the public. So I'm all about building community in science while sharing it with others, which makes Bulletin, I feel, a perfect fit for my blog, which is Science and the Culture. And I feel like Facebook really needs scientists and science educators to serve where they're needed the most, not just in real life, but especially on social media where information spreads so fast, as we all know. So I'm really looking forward to the discussions that we have on the platform.
Hey.
Yeah,
go ahead. Go ahead, Tyler. Or Mark.
That was me, but you're back, so go for it.
Well, I was just going to ask, you know, because of COVID, like, I think the last year's science has been front and center for people who might not normally be interested or
Hey, Campbell,
following.
1 second. Campbell, Raven, can you hear Campbell now? Just want to make sure.
I can. Yes,
Okay,
I
great.
can.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right, carry on.
Okay, we're learning. So I was just thinking that, you know, so many people who may not be normally interested in science have been following the developments much more closely because of COVID. And I know what you've been trying to do is sort of tap into that with young people especially. So how have you done that?
Well, I'll be creating dialogue about science through Bulletin, but not just science. I'll be talking about the complexities that go along with it. The process of science, the culture, the systems that exist in it. And I feel that it's really important to bring diversity to the table and kind of disrupting this tradition and stereotypes of how science looks and how science is discussed, and making sure that we're also creating space for people of all different backgrounds and all different identities, whether they consider themselves a part of the science world or not. It's really important that we create this space. And I think young people today, in my opinion, from what I see, they're embracing such a larger freedom and greater sense of self and expression. And it's really important that we take the time to make space for this growth and make sure that science culture grows in the same way that our young people are growing.
I have to say there was one thing you did, Raven, that I just loved during COVID, which is you were connecting with teens who were stuck at home and creating at-home science experiments and challenges for them to do, which I was one of those parents who had kids stuck at home, and it was just, I feel like it really fills you were trying to fill a void that, so many of our kids were missing out on this kind of thing because schools were closed. So I think, your creativity has really been to the Atlantic, who writes about medicine and science, and he's going to be writing a bulletin about medicine and the science of well-being. He's really an interesting writer. But go ahead if you guys have questions.
Raven, may I ask you something?
Yes,
It seems right now we're in this moment, people are super excited about science, like the mRNA vaccines. They work, right? So what are the prospects moving forward for science to have a permanently higher status?
Higher status in...
Kids will grow up wanting to be scientists. People will revere science in a way they might have in the 1950s or 60s, but somewhat lost track of.
Well, I think we do have to kind of look at who we're focusing on. One of my biggest priorities is making sure that science is accessible to everyone, and making sure that since we understand knowledge is power, let's make sure we talk about it openly and allow space for people to come as they are into science education spaces. It's important to make everyone understand or realize that science is for everyone. You don't have to be a scientist to love science and learn science. You just need an open mind that's ready to explore the world and around you and even the world inside of you. And so once we get to that point where people no longer are questioning if they're even allowed in the space, I think that we will be able to have more access, more people interested in being in the space, and people being able to identify, hey, I can learn science. I do belong here, and I'm interested in this, and I want to learn, and I want to share this with other people, and hopefully maybe even become a scientist, but if not that, at least be able to understand it and talk about it and share it with others.
Hey, Raven, let me say Mark and Tyler, we have to congratulate Raven because she just finished her PhD. So huge congrats.
Congrats.
Thank you so much. It was
awesome.
Love.
Well, what's next for you? I mean, obviously, other than Bulletin, Science, and Culture, what else is on your agenda?
Well, I did some novel research in science communication that is going to help us understand how to communicate science better to the public. And it involves things that I already talked about today, making it more accessible and relatable to broader audiences. And so I'm hoping to transform that research into books so I can share it. And you don't have to read my dissertation to get it, because I don't think anybody wants to read a whole dissertation. I create science-themed music, and I'm working on very fun, actually rap music content that is science-based for kids and adults to learn science and dance while doing it. I'm developing a super engaging science web series that I'm currently looking for a platform to host it, but I'm so excited about that. And then lastly, I'm starting a new position at UC Irvine in the fall. I'll be a director within their School of Biological Sciences, and I'll be working on diversity initiatives there and teaching.
Raven, that is so awesome. Huge congrats.
Thank you so much, Campbell. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, it is awesome, and we're glad to have you on board and be working with you on Bulletin. I think this is going to be awesome. I have more of an appreciation for how important science comms are. With some of the work that I've been doing in my philanthropy around science, just making sure that we can kind of communicate the incredible progress that's happening to folks and build trust in the field, I think is really critical. So I think your work here is really important. I'm also curious, just to go back to Tyler's question for a moment around science's current status in this period after the mRNA vaccines, and which really is a triumph, right? To be able to build a new type of vaccine faster than any other vaccine has been built to date, and have it be so far looking like it has a higher effectiveness and safety than almost any of the other vaccines out there. it's really a great moment. And I'm kind of curious just to go deeper for a moment, or even, Tyler, you asked the question, but I'd love to get your thoughts too on kind of what do you think it'll take to kind of keep building the field and getting, because I think that the statement that you put out about having science be kind of permanently elevated is something that more kids grow up wanting to do would be awesome.
Definitely. I'm listening.
Raven, let me first say I'm honored to be your colleague in Bulletin. I think we're on the verge of a whole series of new and very exciting advances in biomedicine, driven by the democratization of extreme computing power across many more scientists. And it's great that you're going to be covering all this.
Thank you, Tyler. And I just want to say I was listening to the conversation about AI earlier. There are so many ways that we're going to be able to utilize these new technologies to make our discoveries happen faster so that we can act quickly when there are global emergencies. And I'm really excited to see what the potential of the future can be as things move forward.
All right.
Awesome.
Raven, thank you. You're incredible. We're so excited to have you guys. And Mark, maybe we should just mention again, we put out a list of the writers who are starting today on Bulletin, but we'll be introducing you through live audio rooms and other means to some of the other writers who will be joining over the next few days and weeks ahead.
Yeah, very, very exciting. Excited for what's to come here. And I also want to thank Tyler and Raven for dropping in today and for being a part of the conversation and for being a part of Bulletin overall. I'm excited to see how your work here unfolds and the stories that you're able to tell and the intellectual topics you're able to get into with them. So thank you, and also thanks for everyone for listening and joining. And I hope you all enjoy the upcoming holiday weekend.
Thanks, Mark. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you all.
All right, see ya.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.